Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leah Lawrence, and I took the train here yesterday from Ottawa, and this morning I took Uber from my hotel, which will play into further conversation we will have this evening. It's an exciting time. The creative disruption of energy, old and new, is accelerating. Truisms that have been around for 100 or 150 years have been, or are about to be, turned on their head. Today, my role is going to be that of environmental capitalist or small company advocate. And I'm going to talk about 3 energy truths that will guide us, I think, on this disruptive transition that Chris alluded to. And what more recently the World Energy Council called the Great Transition. So these 3 energy truths are scarcity to abundance, the Uberization of energy, and small company innovators for disruption. Truth number 1. It was almost 25 years ago that nations from around the world signed the Kyoto Protocol. And it was in July 2008, Deb will reiterate this for me, that oil prices hit their peak. And while there have been much hand-wringing and despair over the Kyoto Protocol and its implementation or not, and much concern about what used to be called a high price of oil and peak oil, there has been much that has come concomitant to these things under the surface going on beneath. Governments started the slow march of climate policy, some carbon pricing, some not. The private sector and individuals responded to that high price of a few years ago, and most importantly, in my view, entrepreneurs were moved to capitalize on both. So 25 years is a long time, and it's a good thing because energy technologies, be they old or be they new, require immense amounts of capital and time. And new energy technologies are going to require that we think and do something new. But it's happening. Wind and solar generation exceeded that of nuclear worldwide this year. Wind and solar investments exceeded that of oil and gas for the last 2. And a week ago, I stood on the 101st floor of the Empire State Building and looked down, but I was thinking about new energy, and I realized that that building went through a retrofit just a few years ago and now uses 40% less energy than it once did. And so when you look at the forecasts and the recent study that I mentioned by the World Energy Council, we can see and envision a world where energy is no longer scarce, but in fact might move to abundance. And there are even some whispers from some folks at Cambridge Energy Research and others that say we might see in North America first and the world later, peak demand. So still a long way to go, and there's a lot of uncertainty and bumps along the way, but I'd say that's cause for hope. Energy truth number 2, the urbanization of energy, or Uberization of energy. Okay, take the power of Uber and apply it to blank and fill in your favorite entrepreneurial venture, and you'll be able to raise capital. And maybe that includes new energy. Now I know that I took Uber today, and there's a lot of controversy about Uber right now in Montreal, and some of the cities I've lived in previously, we weren't even able to use it, but let me just run with this analogy. What is it about Uber that we like? Real-time data, mobile payments, instant gratification, dynamic pricing, and the like. Or we like that the driver is working for themselves, or maybe that they're not part of a monopoly or an oligopoly, and we're sticking it to the man. In short, we like elements of choice and control. And we'd like that in our energy too. We want that instant gratification of programming my washing machine to go a few hours later so that I can save a few bucks. But I want more than that. I want sustainability and localization too. Maybe I want to be a prosumer, have solar panels on my house and sell into the grid through net metering, given the opportunity to do so. But then I look around and I see that many of the new energy technologies that I use or would like to use didn't originate from the utility companies, but rather from small company innovators outside of that big utility realm. And I also see those same utility companies using regulators and courts to enforce the status quo. And I wonder where it will all go. And that brings me to SDTC, or Sustainable Development Canada, the company that I'm currently working with today. SDTC, if you don't know, is in the business of supporting these new energy entrepreneurs, the young ones. In fact, 90% of our investments go to companies that are small and medium-sized enterprise. Over 300 of them, in fact, over 15 years. If you haven't heard of us, we're a foundation, arm's length from the Government of Canada, and over these 15 years, we've invested about $1 billion of your taxpayers' dollars. We've done it in all kinds of things. Jane is going to speak about some of the great companies we've invested in with Mars, and they are, these small company innovators, changing the way we think about the environment, the economy, and energy, too. Now, you heard an argument about price just now from Chris, but I would also quote Adam Smith, why not? You know, Adam Smith said a lot of things about price, but he also said that in a perfectly competitive market, that companies are likely to underinvest in R&D. And when you're talking about clean energy technologies with such long lives, 15, 10 years or 15 or more, then they're unlikely to invest the optimal amount. And so there's room for the public sector as well, and that is SDTC. Truth number 3. Small company innovators are the means. I think I already made that case in talking about what we do, but you know, I want to just extend it just a little bit, because Canada is a nation of small company innovators. Historically, we have had so many, from telecommunications, extreme engineering, oil and gas, and renewable energy. And this is the basis on which we could grow and become leaders in new energy, both domestically and around the world. And this is really potential we must seize. It's called creative disruption, and it can bring change to the industry across the board. There'll be winners and there'll be losers, but it's meaningful and we can do it. But as we think about that and recognize our strengths in this area, we need to remember that the rest of the world is ahead of us. China, United States, South Korea, they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 5 to 10 years, depending on the nation, in the competing new energy technologies that we're speaking about. And we have much work to do. But in that vein, I think we can. But we need to think of ourselves as a team. So imagine a soccer team. Maybe the Canadian national women's team. Why not? You have your forwards. You know those ones. They're the fast movers, the new generation of technologies. They're the diverse mix, complementary but different, with special characteristics and unique talents of their own. They can be nimble and novel. They're the wind, the solar, why not wave tidal in the Bay of Fundy. They're companies like Morgan Solar, like Open Hydro. These are Canadian institutions that you may not have heard of, but they're about, hopefully, to make it big. Then you have your midfielders. For those that aren't soccer fans, you know, those are the folks that take the ball from the defense to the offense to get things going. Well, those are the supporting guys that might be, or girls in my case, they might be the energy storage companies that provide fast response, the flywheels or the batteries. Temporal Power is a Canadian example. And then, of course, there's the defense and the goalies. Now, there's new and old energy companies in this mix, because what you're looking for here is a bridge that helps with the transition. And here, one might be a company called Hydrogenics, which is looking at creating hydrogen from renewable energy and putting it through our pipeline system. And guiding them all is the coach, mining the data and communicating performance in real time. And, well, you know, the players can act on it or not. That's really their choice. Canadian company here is Opus One Solutions. But when you bring it all together, it's magic and it's transformative, and you can do something that you had never done before. But it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes working together. Julian Simon called energy the master resource. By that he meant that it affects all of the economy, and each and every one of us is daily lives. And it means that this great transition that Chris so aptly introduced will affect us all. And that is where I think my analogy of a team starts to fall short, because it's not just a team we need in Canada, given that the world is also already in advance. It's a community. It's all of our community. It's perhaps the quintessential Canadian paradox that to enable new energy, we need to reach out, to collaborate, and to work together. And on energy, it seems, never have we been so divided, claiming that old is bad and new is good. Really, that paradox is too much. We can't really be there and be successful in this field. We know better than that. We know that Canada works better together, and we know that we will only succeed if we bridge the two. Zita Cobb, who's a champion that has spoken at a Walrus talk before, very fantastically, you should watch it if you haven't. She's the advocate for Newfoundland's Fogo Island, and they've done amazing things. And she says, we are operating in a global network of intensely local places. I would expand on that and say, in energy, we're operating in an intensely competitive global market, and we have intensely local places that need to work together. And if we do that, we'll be successful together too.